So just to give you some quick background, many years ago I had a minor head injury and I basically had migraine headaches daily after that. So then later when I got treated with migraine meds, I developed a heart condition, and I didn't even know that I had a heart condition because I didn't really notice any kind of heart symptoms. But I was, but the good news was, and even if I knew I had a heart condition, I wasn't going to get rid of it because the daily migraines were gone. So basically I had like numbness and some dizziness in the head, which replaced the daily migraine. So it was really good to get rid of those migraine symptoms. But with the numbness and the dizziness, the problem I had was, I could only, on a work day, I could only work like 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon kind of deal. And if I drove a car, I can only drive like half an hour in one stretch. So those were kind of the problems I had. And so really, in 2013, I wasn't working at that time. And so I was actually trying to get like a doctor's note basically for workplace accommodations. I already had something like a neuropsych test, and so I guess they have all kinds of problems which can be found on a neuropsych test, but I didn't have any of like a psychiatric type problems, so I basically had something like a hand-eye coordination type problem. And I guess that was coming by the numbness and the dizziness. And, so that was actually like a mental impairment, but it's not like a psychiatric problem. Okay, so yeah, so there's no need to think that, there's any kind of psychiatric condition going on here. But these kind of problems get taken care of by a neurologist. And so in 2013, I found like a cheap neurologist in Northern Virginia, and that was Dr. Sonali Kulkarni. And she practices out of the Innova Doctor's Office Neurology Office in Fairfax. So I went there, and I think she did a good job as far as writing everything up, and I didn't even know at the time, but basically what I needed was like a good set of medical records, since I really didn't go to a doctor for the problem for a long time, since it was much better than the migraines. So I was kind of settled in for those symptoms, and I was okay with just living with them kind of deal. So I didn't really try to get them treated. I didn't think there was any treatment out there anyway. So I went to Dr. Kulkarni, and actually she ended up writing a good set of doctor's notes which I could have used for workplace accommodations. But afterwards, the things that she did, my condition became so much worse so for someone who was very stable for like 10 years and looked like was, except for that problem, I was mainly healthy, and I really thought I could have been getting back to work at that time. But actually she did something to make me a lot more sicker, and which was incredible how it happened. And so what happened is she sent me for an MRI. Now, she sent me for a whole bunch of tests, and by the symptoms that I gave her and what she knew, she should have known that I also had a heart condition, and that was probably giving me all my neurological symptoms. But anyway, ultimately the heart condition and the neurological symptoms of what I had before essentially has no relevance to what happened in February of 2013. So even though I wasn't working, she tried to basically rip me off by trying to get me to go for like $10,000 worth of tests, including this ridiculous sleep study at their office at Innova, just trying just trying to make some money off my back. Obviously, I didn't take that ridiculous sleep study for $5,000. Okay, so, but one of the tests I went for was a simple MRI test. And I didn't even think I needed that, because the MRI test and stuff, if your condition is stable for 9-10 years, there's nothing to look for an MRI test. The MRI test is kind of when you have some brand new symptoms and you want to see what it is before it gets worse. But my condition wasn't getting worse. I didn't need an MRI test. But okay, anyway, just to keep the doctor happy, and I went ahead for the MRI test. And I found a real cheap place, and it happened to be in Bethesda. You would think Bethesda is the most expensive commercial area in Maryland. And how is it they're giving me the cheapest price? They actually gave me $500 for an MRI with contrast. And no one else was giving that kind of price. Everyone else was offering $800 for that one. If I went without the contrast, I could have gotten it for $500. But once you add the contrast for that extra work, they were looking for $800. So anyway, I went to Capital Imaging LLC of Bethesda, and it turns out that this little MRI facility, they only have one MRI machine there. And really what I found out later is that legitimate medical care is only a side business. So really, a neurologist owns the place. Actually, a neurologist and a radiologist owns the place. So the neurologist basically sends his patients there, and the radiologist will find all kinds of, the neurologist who owns the place is a back surgeon, right? So the neurologist sends their patients, his patients over there, and they find all kinds of problems with the back, and then they get recommended for surgery, and obviously he gets the money. And this is kind of like a common kind of scam, and it's done throughout the country, where back surgeons, they hook up with like an MRI facility. In this case, they own the whole thing. And so it's not just they run the scam for themselves, but also they market the scam to other doctors who want to justify unnecessary surgeries, and also to slip and fall cases. So if someone falls in a store or something and they really haven't hurt themselves in any way, they can go to this place and they would find some problem with the MRI, and you can basically hold up that poor store owner for some money, basically, for a fraudulent case. So that's the kind of operation they were running. And one of the individuals there who's I guess all their people are owners, they have them as owners. But the main two people, the neurologist and the radiologist who interprets the tests, how convenient, right? The neurologist owns the place and the radiologist owns the place, and they both just send from one to the other, and they interpret the testing. So anyway, and so what happens is, and one of the people, in fact, what I found out in a later news article, they have a person named Patrick Jackson. And he's basically a lifetime fraud artist. He's been running all kinds of medical frauds, and most recently he was convicted, a felony conviction for defrauding doctors and veterinarians. So, and I guess that now he's running some frauds out of this place. So we can kind of see the kind of place I ended up in. And then I got this MRI technician whose name, actually, his first name, well, his name is, let's see, his name, his actual name is Manuel Macayong Papel. So he's a Filipino, but that's on his driver's license and all his other records. But then when you come to his Maryland radiographer's license, he uses a different first name. It's Antonio. So that's the kind of shop the state of Maryland runs as far as looking over their doctors and medical professionals. So they're letting this guy literally. So obviously he's done something wrong in the past, and he's using an AKA, and and how does he get to use the name Antonio on his state radiographer license when his driver's license says his first name is Manuel, and all of his other records says it's Manuel. So yeah, so it looks like he hooked up with these people in 2005, and he's had a radiographer's license since 1995. But incredibly, even though a radiographer is in high demand, like an MRI tech or a radio, so nobody hired him for like 10 years until he hooked up with these people. So he was working for Quest Diagnostics, and obviously what he was doing there was he was a phlebotomist. So, and what he would do to me is something using those techniques. So what happened is I went there, and the MRI test started, and the MRI test was running through just fine, very fast, and and right towards the end, how the MRI test for the brain goes, they have like 8 sequences. So they take 8 set of images first, then they inject you with contrast, and then they do like 3 more sets or something approximate to that. So he was very quick. He was taking like 2.5. Now I got all this electronic information from the CD that he gave me, so I can get all the electronic data recording. And what it shows basically is the test, which was supposed to take like 45 minutes, it took almost 2 hours. And I can easily prove from that electronic evidence itself that he intentionally made me unconscious. Now, and then I also got the medical records after that showing what happened. What he did is, even though everything was going through fine, he acted as though there was some problem with the injection and he had to do a second injection. He took about 10 minutes to actually jerry-rig this catheter to my hand. And he actually, how you're supposed to inject the vein, and the vein takes the blood up to the heart and distributes it all throughout the body. And if you add the contrast, that's where you do it. But he intentionally injected an artery, and the way he jerry-rigged it is, he actually flushed water he actually flushed water. And it was not a little bit, it's a whole lot. So he flushed water up my artery in my arm and actually blew out the artery in the arm. And there's no other way to blow out the artery in the arm other than what he did. And then he flushed out the blood in the head, and it also, so I get injuries to my brain, and I also get injuries to my heart because he's doing this rapid flushing with water all throughout my arteries. And I was unconscious for 45 minutes, and there's no doubt what he did. he committed a sexual assault, and I have some other evidence which I'm not going to show, but I think there were more than one person involved as well. So I know what happened is he made me unconscious with this method that really injured me, simply to do a sex assault. So it's not like he made me unconscious by some kind of medication,